First wave of NFL free agency is come and gone, and the Chiefs have had to say goodbye to some players, retain some of their current roster, and say hello to some new players outside of the organization. I will break down each and every one of those free agency splashes and more next here on Gridiron Gambit.
Welcome, Chiefs Kingdom. Thanks for tuning in to this Red Kingdom Media production, bringing you raw, authentic Chiefs coverage. Make sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date on your team. Now sit back and enjoy the show.
Offseason. Let's work. Hey.
What's going on, everybody? This is a surprise Tuesday AM solo edition of Gridiron Gambit. I'm your host, Clinton Petrie, for today's conversation. Last I talked with you all, we discussed the trade for Trent McDuffie to the Los Angeles Rams and the first rounder, fifth and sixth rounder, and the next year's third rounder that the Chiefs got for trading away Trent McDuffie. And then free agency started a couple weeks ago. We saw the big name moves and now some of the smaller name moves that have trickled in or out of the Chiefs organization. And I'm just here to, kind of rapid fire my way through them, kind of go off of my opinion, what I think of each and every player, big or small, depending on the contract they received, and all that. So the discussion or the group of players that I want to kind of go over first is going to be the rest of the departures that the Chiefs have said goodbye to within their organization. So the very first guy that comes to mind, other than Trent McDuffie, who I mentioned I've already discussed, is no longer on this team, and the big trade that goes with him. We have his we basically have all of the rest of the Fab Five, but for the first point, we have the other number one corner we thought the Chiefs would maybe try to retain with Trent McDuffie walking away from this team in Jalen Watson. He followed Trent McDuffie to Los Angeles on a 3-year deal worth $51 million, which is an average of about $17 million a year. So to pay Trent McDuffie $30 million and pair him up with Jalen Watson at $17 million, that is a pretty hefty penny. That it's kind of hard to understand if you're the Chiefs. Now, myself and the Chiefs love both of those players, both McDuffie and Watson, but I think you have to understand where your price tag is and know that the Chiefs are really good at having good cornerbacks kind of sneak into their organization via draft or some under-the-radar signings like we will get to here a little later. But I think, the Chiefs are going to miss Jalen Watson's impact and Trent McDuffie's as well, but Jalen Watson, I think, was a valuable player on this roster, and they're going to have to search in the draft and use some of those mid-round picks and maybe even some of those higher-end picks to find a player as good as Jalen Watson to take his spot. So I know Chiefs Kingdom is going to miss having Jalen Watson here. To piggyback off that, we have another member of the Fab 5 in the 2022 draft. We have a second-round pick, Brian Cook, the safety, deciding to go essentially back home to Cincinnati to sign with the Bengals for 3 years, about $41 million, averaging about $14 million a year. Again, this is a player that you maybe would have hoped the Chiefs would have retained. However, the price tag and his role kind of within the defense, it was kind of a no selling point by that, because you were not going to pay Brian Cook this amount of money, and in free agency, you're going to need to pay a price if you want to retain a player, especially if you let him hit the open market. And there was no player on the Chiefs roster or the free agent pool this year that they were willing to tag, and Trent McDuffie has a year left on his fifth-year option. So there was a little bit more money and stuff to play with instead of a completely new contract separated from what your rookie scale was. So, Brian Cook was a heck of a player, good free safety, but it seems like that must have been very limited in his role here. And so he decided to, go home to Cincinnati. I'm sure we don't like to see him in those colors in that division, playing with Joe Burrow, but you got to understand it's where he's from, it's where he played in college. So understands why he'd want to go there, and it's also a perfect fit because the Bengals defense is in need of that position, and Brian Cook was available. So we will wish him all the best, except for when he plays against us. Next, we have another one of the secondary, Joshua Williams. He did not have as much of the fanfare as Jalen Watson, but I think when he was asked to play that type of role that Jalen Watson did, he was able to do it, effectively. He had his downsides, but I think he, did his part on the team and did what defense asked him to do. He's signing in Tennessee for 2 years for roughly $6.75 million and an average of $3 million a year. So not that expensive, but another rookie scale contract that you can give to another player. And it feels like this offseason, the Chiefs want some, talent that is kind of hidden under the radar, diamonds in the rough that they can sculpt to use how they need to, and kind of penny pinch where they can. The secondary seems to be a spot that loves to get kind of shorthanded. Obviously, it's worked out for the Chiefs in various ways, but you also have to wonder, is that ever going to bite them at some point, knowing they can't handle that kind of turnover each and every year. But overall, those three players, that secondary, now ending with Joshua Williams, we're going to have to see the turnaround the roster makes with them gone, because they made a tremendous impact on this roster, and their production will be sorely missed, and we will see how after the draft we feel going into the season, whether or not their production can be replaced by the youngsters like that routine has worked out in previous seasons. Then we got a sadder departure. I know some younger Chiefs fans in Red Kingdom didn't want to see him go. They liked him wearing the number 10 now. But Isaiah Pacheco, after the Chiefs signed the running back that we'll discuss in this second portion of this, they said goodbye to Isaiah Pacheco, and he's going to the the Detroit Lions for a 1-year deal worth about $2 million. When he came to Kansas City, he basically took Clyde's job, and now he's going to the Lions, where he will be the for sure backup next to Jahmyr Gibbs. So, lesser role there, but maybe it's good for Pacheco to kind of get a different scenery going on for him, different state of mind. A lot of Chiefs Kingdom was going sour on him and thought some of the blame was necessarily pointed to him and not the offensive line for its lack of production. But whether or not Pacheco or the Chiefs wanted to have kind of a complete reset, I'm not sure. But we will have to, kind of go from here, whether or not Pacheco was worth bringing back at, a couple $1 million as a backup. I know a lot of people are still wanting Kareem Hunt to rejoin this team now. But, Pacheco would have been a little younger if he would have been willing to know that he was going to be a backup instead of the main starter. But it may have been a case where he just wanted a complete reset, and Detroit's a good enough team. They always rely on the running game to do it. And maybe Pacheco will learn something or improve his game outside the organization. So I know a lot of the youngsters here will miss him and wish him all the best. So good on you, Pacheco, and nice to see it continue in your career. Then we got the defensive linemen that have walked away from the Chiefs, and the most expensive being our guy Leo Chenal. He bolted over to the Washington Commanders for a 3-year deal worth $24.75, so an average of $8.25 million a year. This is a good move if you're Washington. I think a lot of people go back and forth on whether they think Leo Chenal is valuable, whether or not he's an edge or a linebacker, and what he can do well and what he has deficiencies at. But I think those around here, especially his blocked field goal against the Broncos and some other things he's asked to do, like chase down Lamar Jackson, those type of mini things, the specific niche roles that he was asked to do, he did very well. And we were very excited to kind of see his career continue to unfold. I kind of hoped he would be able to take on more responsibility and showcase his abilities more, especially his athleticism and his turnaround speed and silent sideline. But that's just not how he was used in this defense, and his role was never impacted greatly and improved on. So he did what was asked of him, and we didn't get to see him much outside of that. He's ultimately here because another player chose to take a pay cut, and I'll talk about him in the second portion of this. But Leo's a guy that I always cheered for and always rooted for, and I'm sure he'll do well in Washington, and we'll miss him. Congratulate him on the payday that he was able to get for himself. To go alongside with Mr. Leo Chenal, there is one Charles Omenihu, who has also walked away from the Chiefs and signed what is roughly a $7 million deal, $4 to $7 million, depending on who you ask or the details of the contract and stuff like that. But once Omenihu got hurt here in that postseason, he just never got back to form, and every time we hoped he would kind of take a step up and perform a little better than what he had been doing, he was just kind of, back to the status quo for him. So it stinks that he didn't have like a revival year and, couldn't be modern day Frank Clark for us. But, he's going to go to a team that has a good defensive line. Also adding Leo Chenal there, so they're going to be able to revolve. And I think the Chiefs' struggles last year was the defensive line was so predictable, kind of doing the same things and never really getting to showcase explosiveness or keep offensive guessing. So maybe Omenihu senses that and thinks that he's going to go make more of an impact and kind of go under the radar in Washington and kind of revitalize his career that way instead of chase the rings. And I would respect that. He came here, got his rings, so no apt on him for not wanting to stay and go see where he can make an impact elsewhere. But it's a shame he couldn't revitalize his career here after that injury, and how things kind of took a downhill after that. So, Red Kingdom will wish him all the best. Next, we have the kind of smaller signing of Malik Herring to the Titans. Just a 1-year deal. Not really have the contract numbers out because he's been an undrafted player. Usually you have to work your way through to earn certain amounts of money unless the team really wants to pay you. But we're going to see a lot of kind of just tendered contracts, especially for who the Chiefs chose to re-sign. But Malik Herring, just kind of a backup defensive end, got some playing time over some other guys here and there, but never was really asked to do much. And it seems like on the defense, we're ready to kind of just start over and get younger or get more experienced. And that also piggybacks into the Derek Nottie choosing to go sign with the Indianapolis Colts for veteran $1.5 million type year. And I know a lot of Chiefs fans are kind of unhappy that they traded for Derek Nottie midway or early part last season, and kind of the lack of production that he was able to do here. And the Chiefs are going to correct that issue with an outside free agent that I'll talk about here in a little bit. But the fact that it's time to kind of wipe our hands clean, start over, especially with this defensive line and the quarterbacks, kind of let Spagnuolo get his hands all over the defense again and go younger and get some more explosiveness out of that. They'll shade Derek Nottie, but it's just time for him to go by that point, and wish him all the best. And then lastly, in terms of players who departed the Chiefs organization, we have our former backup quarterback, Gardner Minshew. He is going to the Arizona Cardinals, and the quarterback the Chiefs brought in as a backup via trade, I will discuss here a little bit. Gardner Minshew, we kind of hoped the best for him. We saw a little limited performance out of him. It seemed like he got injured, and then it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but still was kind of been shut down for the Chiefs. So never really got to see Gardner Minshew do his thing. But, wish him all the best. All still, he's a cool guy. And didn't like him when he was in the Raiders, obviously, but felt like we could beat him. So, I think he'll be a decent player for the Cardinals. Whether or not they get another quarterback here to eat up the snaps that the contract of Kyler Murray is still working there, or if he's just got to, just be there to hold the fort for a little bit and maybe get the Cardinals the number one pick next year and reset their roster and all that. Speculation, but we're going to wish Gardner Minshew all the best. And we wish everybody outside of the Chiefs organization that signed away all the best. And now we are going to shift our conversation to the players the Chiefs have decided to retain on their roster. But before we do that, please make sure to
like and subscribe. Follow us on all our social media platforms at Red Kingdom Media. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave a like or comment so we can reply and interact with you and make you a part of the show. If you listen to us on Spotify, please rate us 5 stars so we can increase our reach in the playlist. Follow us and all our contributors on all the social media platforms: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and X. If you'd like to come on and talk Chiefs, message us so we can potentially set that up. Do you enjoy written content? Subscribe to our Substack. We have both a free and a $5 a month subscription and post on there frequently. And if you have any interest in being a contributor on the writing staff, feel free to reach out and we'll be in touch. It would help support the brand if you would purchase our merch, like the shirt that I'm wearing currently. Set up an order for one of these or 2 or 3, and this will allow us to expand our inventory options. Thanks for being a part of this channel, and if there's any partner that's listening to this interested in sponsoring the show or any other content that we produce, please reach out. Now, back to the show.
I would be a bad live streamer if I did not point out the current NFL news that is happening right now as I'm live recording this, talking about the Chiefs, and that the Dolphins are trading away Jalen Waddle to the Broncos for the 30th overall pick. So the Broncos are getting more explosive on offense, and Miami is in stall mode, and we already knew that. They already got rid of Tyreek Hill, and who knows, after the draft, whether or not we'll see Tyreek Hill re-signing to this roster. But for now, we're going to keep the conversations to players that are on the Chiefs roster. And the first set we're going to go with are the ones that are originally from the Chiefs and deciding to come back and re-sign in some form or fashion. And obviously the biggest name out of that list, the one that we heard first and foremost, is Mr. Travis Kelce. He is returning for his 14th NFL season, coming back for the 2026 season. And he's returning on what is set to be a 12-year up to, or 1 year, $12 million up to $15 million a year. And came out afterwards that a lot of this was very much based on incentives. So set to only make about $3 million and then $9 million if he's on the roster here, and if a couple million here if he plays in the playoffs, and how much time he plays, and all this other stuff. So, the Chiefs did him, you could say, dirty by not just giving him the full amount of money that he would earn as one of the top tight ends on the market. But Travis Kelce also knew this is a place he did not want to walk away from, much to some of the reports that obviously came out about, he's just searching other teams and he may go to the Giants. Well, that did not happen because the Giants would have paid him a lot more money than what the Chiefs gave him to walk away. So that's going to bring Travis Kelce back for a season. Seemed like all of us fans kind of looked like he was done, but in his heart and how last year was progressing, he didn't want to walk out in that state. And so it was time for Travis to make his decision. And that was one of the first things that we heard come out, that he was coming back. And then the rest of the moves the Chiefs made were kind of based on that. So I'm happy Travis Kelce's coming back. I don't think next season can end as bad as the previous season did, and maybe that's where I could be, oblivious and sadly mistaken. But I just feel like the Chiefs are set to have some more success this year than how last year transpired, and they're making some tough changes to their roster in order to do that. And thankfully, Travis Kelce is a staple in this roster, in the locker room for Patrick Mahomes as a weapon. Should he continue to get first targets and stuff like that, you can debate that all you want, but the Chiefs are a good team when Travis Kelce is playing for them at the tight end position, and I'm glad that we get to see that at least for one more year. And depending on the results of this next year, we will discuss the following year after that. But I'm glad that the Kelce retirement tour can go on for at least one more year of conversation. Another notable player the Chiefs chose to bring back was wide receiver Tyquan Thornton at 2 years and about $11 million. Pretty good penny. I mean, if you compare his stats to Alec Pierce is going to make a buttload more money than Tyquan Thornton, but they were both kind of good at the same thing. And Thornton came out and was saying he wants to go somewhere where he'll have production. And it seemed like when he did have production, and then the Chiefs decided to go away from him. So I'm hoping that this kind of solidifies that Thornton's here, at least for this season, and he will make a tremendous impact on the field. He was the best deep threat the Chiefs had. And, depending on how Worthy comes back and whether or not we see Rashee Rice in this offense, you could still make that claim. And with Patrick Mahomes having his rehab, he'll need some receivers that he can trust. And I think all last year, Tyquan Thornton, other than a couple drops, but the entire offense had drops, and that was more of a coaching issue. I think at this point you can point the finger at than the individuals as a whole. But I think Tyquan Thornton is a reliable receiver for Patrick Mahomes, and he will make a tremendous impact on his down the field action that he brings. And I'm excited to see him kind of grow in this offense. And maybe use him as a cheat code, like send Tyreek on a deep ball on a 9 route and just outrun everybody and give us enough time. The Chiefs are building an offensive line that are dominant enough that they're going to be able to run the ball effectively now, and there's this idea that they should be able to throw the ball deep in that same type of consistency. So here's that Tyquan Thornton can bring that consistency, especially in the deep passing game, and I'm happy to have him here. Another, came out as big news. How much can a long snapper be big news? He's coming back for, approximately $2 million. I mean, but that's because he's the longest reigning long snapper in the league. So, he gets that contract and fully guaranteed. So good for him on that he knows that he'll make that money. But, Winchester, dependable guy, literally been here the longest out of everybody right now, longer than Travis Kelce is. So that's going to continue. So I don't really have any long snapper takes other than seems like a good guy and good for the community. So Chiefs are just rewarding a guy that they can, bring into next season and figure out where he wants to go from there. So a player I alluded to during my Leo Chenal conversation was that, they chose another player currently on the roster and essentially asked him to take a pay cut. And that player is Drew Tranquill. He opted to trim down his base pay about $3 million less in order to kind of give the Chiefs some more wiggle room in terms of the contract money they want to play with this year. And so, I guess thankful to Drew that he was willing to kind of let some of that money go. He had no right to do that. And in doing so, I think it saved his job because, they might have just outright released him or tried to trade him away if someone was willing. But they like him and like his leadership enough to keep him around. And if he was willing to take a pay cut, then both sides are happy. And I think Drew can just pay attention to this coming season and work on that and not worry about if somebody's ready to come and take him and remove him from the spot. And then, we have just the guys that came back that are more exclusive rights. No major money to talk about, won't really count towards the 51 most paid contracts on the team. So, you have your punter coming back, Matt Rice, at about $1 million. You have Mike Caliendo, who nobody signed qualifying, so came back a little over $1 million. You have Colton Christensen, a linebacker, roughly about $1.2 million. And then Nico Remigio, also about $1 million. He came out as a restricted tender. And so those four guys are coming back at basically the vet minimum for not being in the league that long. And I think they're going to make their impact where they have, whether, I think Ariza will probably make this roster for sure. Whether the other three make it or is a backup that never sees the field, not history will tell that point, but you need those roster filler guys that you can depend on, good humans, good personalities, good character to have in the locker room and stay in the community. And so for the time being, that's what the Chiefs have done. So those are the players that the Chiefs have re-signed that have been in their organization. Now it's time to talk about the bigger conversations, the guys that chose to come to Kansas City. And the biggest one of that group is the Super Bowl 60 MVP, running back Kenneth Walker III. He is signed for 3 years at about $43 million a year, and that gives him an average of $14.3 million. So that is a pretty penny to be paying a running back free agent. And it shows that they were hoping Pacheco would be a bigger deal, and there just wasn't that improvement. And So to completely kind of clear the deck and get arguably the best running back on the free agency market, that's going to cost you money. And the Chiefs were willing to spend that money. And I think the fact that the Chiefs brought Eric Bieniemy in back and said that they want to make the running game a focal point again, this is green flags, thumbs up all around for this signing. Obviously, if Walker gets injured and we never really see him, then we can tell a different story. But I was kind of hoping this is a move the Chiefs would be trying to make once the new league year started. And I'm thankful that it was because it's clear the Chiefs have wanted a kind of bruising running back that also still has the speed and elusiveness to get outside zone and get the plus yardage in that way. And I think Kenneth Walker is a good fit for that. And to pay Walker this much money says that he's taking majority of the running back snaps. And a Chiefs habit for basically the entirety of Andy Reid's tenure here has been running back committees. Even when we had Jamal Charles was never always getting majority of the running back snaps. There would be games he would, and then there'd be other times he just gets a little bit here and there, and Charkandrick West or Spencer Ware is taking majority of the snaps. So it's nice to have that thing that now you believe the Chiefs will rely and depend on because they're spending that type of money and they need to justify that purchase. So I like the signing. Obviously, the money is kind of a red flag. And if the injuries pop up again, that's kind of a scary proposition. But I think, especially with Mahomes coming back from his injury, you're going to want some dependable offense that doesn't have to rely on him. And I think Kenneth Walker is that type of personality. And if not directly or indirectly, is going to have defenses playing against this Chiefs offense a little differently because they cannot stack the box. They cannot hold out that the Chiefs are going to pass on every play again. And to have a running back that demands the respect of we might run the ball and you have to take care of that. And that's what the Chiefs have needed for a while. And it's nice to see them addressing it. And obviously the question will be during the season, are they actually relying on that, or are they going to go back to their laurels and throw the ball a lot like they're used to? So happy to have Kenneth Walker III on this Chiefs team. Then we're going to hit a couple points on the defense. So the first days of free agency, the Chiefs also agreed to a 3-year, $21 million deal with defensive tackle Kyrese Tonga, who had been a previous journeyman but last played on the Super Bowl runner-ups Patriots. And he is set to be the nose tackle that Derek Nottie was kind of traded back to the Chiefs for and never really performed as well as past his rookie deal was slotting him to be. But here we have a hardworking player who is going to make an impact, be asked to play a specific role, and has more pressures up the middle than any of the other guys I already mentioned departing the Chiefs from the defensive line. So this should be some relief for Chris Jones. It'll be relief for Omar Norman Lott to be able to have his rehab and come back as an explosive defensive tackle that is worried about sacks and not worried about playing a position like nose tackle. So this is a fix in many areas. I think that this alone might make the defensive line look so much better than last year. And obviously, if we see some of those first-round choices thrown towards the D-line as well, then it'll look even better. But I think, at least for the short term, this is a nose tackle Band-Aid that the Chiefs had given to themselves when they were kind of back and forth on Nottie and Pennell. And maybe they just need to use a young guy to replace that. But we're going to use a player that's been around the NFL and has earned that trust of several good coaches. And I'm happy to see what impact he makes. Seems like a good guy, and just happy to have him on the roster instead of against him. Another guy I can say the same thing about is Alohi Gilman, previously from the Ravens, but before that was a Charger. He comes to the Kansas City Chiefs on a 3-year, $24 million contract, roughly $8 million a year. So to kind of offset the losses of Watson and Williams, this is kind of your and Cook. This is kind of your middle ground option. Gilman's kind of been an overachiever amongst the NFL, and we saw him when he was on the Ravens last year, when he could let Kyle Hamilton be that nickel strong safety, small linebacker that kind of does a little bit of everything. Gilman was kind of that free safety, would play that role. And I think he's set to be kind of Brian Cook's replacement at this point, and whatever else the Chiefs ask him to do. But Gilman's a good player. I'm excited to see what he brings. I don't think just like the defensive line, I don't think the secondary is quite done having their additions made, and I think a lot of them will be younger talent from the draft. But this is a nice kind of fix for right now, just like the nose tackle or free safety. If you have a bad one of those, it can be really difficult to overcome. And so the Chiefs paid for some reliability and stability there, and excited to see what all kind of impact Gilman can bring on this Chiefs roster. Then we have the kind of tour lessered, quote, free agent moves that were made roughly about a week later. The Chiefs have signed cornerback Kador Koa, who most recently was with the Dolphins. He did not play all of last year as he had an injury happen in training camp. So think about Najee Johnson similarity here. But the Dolphins were really excited for him before that. And if we had question marks about who will be able to play the slot with Trent McDuffie leaving, the idea is that Kador is going to be that player who will be dependable in the slot and be able to let some of the other corners the Chiefs have, like Christian Fulton and Noel Williams and whoever else they may acquire in the draft, allow them to be more boundary corners and let Koa play in the slot where he is good at. Coming off of injury, you don't really know what to expect, but if he plays as well as he is able to, then that allows the Chamari Connor experiment to not go on for as long as it had. And if it not works, then the Chiefs have a specific need to fix the nickel. But for right now, Brett Veach is trying to plug as many holes as possible so that he can go into the draft not really being handcuffed or pigeonholed into specific actions, players, or positions. So can't really talk too much about, is this a big impact? I think it makes sense when you describe it. Now you just need to see it on paper. I'll leave it at that. And then the other move the Chiefs decided to bring is a 1-year deal on the running back Emari DeMarcado, who previously was with the Arizona Cardinals. And he had that infamous play last year where he let go of the ball before he got in the end zone. So he was not perceived well in the organization that he is leaving. But in terms of the explosive runs that he has on his highlight reel, that's something the Chiefs were desperately lacking last year. And for him to be the 1-2 punch behind Kenneth Walker makes a lot of sense. And more importantly, DeMarcado was really good at pass protection. and essentially being that third down running back the Chiefs will need in order to make the chip block that gives Mahomes enough time to find whoever it is for the first down and keep the chains moving. So whether or not he's a dominant runner, that won't be the most important thing. The important thing is being a pass protector in those passing downs. And I think he's shown that he can do that very well. So he will be a welcome addition into that running back room. And lastly, the most recent news the Chiefs have done, they have traded their next year's 6th-round pick for quarterback Justin Fields and giving him roughly about $3 million for this season. I'm intrigued. I think whether you see this as he takes legitimate snaps and weeks while Mahomes recuperates, or if he's just a really good backup that sits on the bench that the Chiefs maybe can trade later or will sign for more money another year from now and net the Chiefs a comp pick like Gardner Minshew is for the Chiefs right now, I'd be all in favor of that too. So I think he'll bring a new dynamic to the offense. He could be there for sneaks if you want to. He could be there for QB runs. He can kind of just be a weapon and not have to worry so much about having a franchise placed on his back. I think Fields has shown that he has talent and can be effective. But if he's asked to do too much of one thing or have to have all the responsibility, he might not be able to handle that, at least within the franchises that he had to deal with before. And the Bears, that was even before Ryan Poles really got his hands on it, so it wasn't really his roster being built. So good for Justin Fields to get out of a situation for the Jets. Hopefully he grows and matures here in Kansas City and the Chiefs find something they like about him. Maybe he wants to be here long term as a backup, or maybe this is just him auditioning to the rest of the NFL that he's still capable, and look what happens when you get grown-ups beside him and behind him. In either case, I'll be excited to see what he is able to do here. And him and Kenneth Walker alone makes this a very new, dynamic, explosive offense in a way that they did not have before. So just making this team different in various ways and making them have different variations of scariness, like that's not a word, but that will increase the success of the Chiefs. And obviously us here in Red Kingdom, we're all in favor of that. But yeah, that's what's going on the last 2 weeks since we left off, and Trent McDuffie was no longer a Chief, and all the players that have come and gone. But ending that with a Justin Fields trade, definitely not what I thought I had on my bingo card this week. But I wanted to get a video or podcast out to you guys to be able to give you something during this week, especially before all the basketball takes over, especially around here, Kansas City. We have the Big 12 tournament around here during the weekend, so kind of lost in that. Didn't want to interrupt y'all's time here, but right now is a little blurb in terms of NFL news. So wanted to kind of regurgitate all this NFL news out to you and kind of give you my thoughts and opinions. So with that being said, I've got nothing else for y'all. I hope you enjoyed this episode, this random Tuesday morning edition, the solo edition of Gridiron Gambit. Make sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow the channel on X, Twitter, same thing, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Subscribe and like on YouTube, all the things, all the places you can do. Leave your responses, your comments. Get back with you if you want to be a guest or participant in a show or write an article. Hit me up. I'd love to talk to you. But that is really all I've got for you today. Just want to let y'all know, if you're listening or watching, I love y'all. Appreciate you. God loves you. Hope you enjoy the rest of this day and the week. And as always, go Chiefs.
Thanks for checking out this update straight from the heart of Chiefs Kingdom. We appreciate your passion, so please leave a like and follow us wherever you tune in from. See you next tailgate, your trusted source for all things Chiefs, Red Kingdom Media.